Hello. In this recording of our Justia webinar, AI for Lawyers Navigating Ethics and Best Practices, Greg Siskin gives an overview of the ethical rules governing lawyers' usage of generative artificial intelligence, as well as some of the other potential sources of liability, including state and federal laws, court rules, as well as malpractice claims. Remember, if you'd like to see more Justia videos on law practice and legal marketing, be sure to subscribe to our channel.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm Greg Siskind, as the introduction noted, I'm a practicing lawyer, and I'm also a founder of an AI company that provides software for immigration lawyers primarily, as well as lawyers in other fields. We're going to be talking today mostly about ethics and the broader implications from a liability perspective of using AI. So we'll be talking about legal ethics, but we're also going to be talking about liability that might come from malpractice claims, court rules that are now hitting this particular area, regulatory oversight, and other things to worry about. But we're going to also talk about how AI can be used in your practices. I think that it is it's not a question of whether you should be thinking at all about using AI. I think most lawyers in the next several years are going to be using these tools, and so the focus is on how to use them responsibly and how to avoid trouble. I will say that I've been when it was noted how long I've been practicing, that I started in 1990. My claim to fame for the first half of my career was that I had been the one of the first lawyers in the world with a website. This is back in 1994. There were a couple of websites that went online for lawyers in that summer of 1994, and I was one of the ones that had it. So, I raised that to not talk about that. I've been around tech for a long time, but because I had there were a lot of ethics questions that arose in those early days regarding the use of the web. So one of them was was whether websites were advertising and whether it was even ethical to have a website. We would think that's a little bit absurd now that we would be looking at that. Another one was whether lawyers could ethically use email and whether the fact that they weren't encrypted was itself a potential violation of confidentiality rules. So that's I mention those just because it's a very fluid subject right now, and I'm going to be going through a bunch of slides in a minute to show you a lot of the issues that come. But the point is that you need to be conscious of it, but it's not necessarily. I think at the time there were people saying, "Well, the internet's not going to catch on," or "There's no way that you can ethically deal with it," and lawyers adapted, and of course, it's considered to be completely normal to be using those tools now. And I think that's probably what's going to be happening with AI in years to come. But for right now, I think that there's still a lot of murkiness as far as which rules apply, how they apply, and how lawyers should go about them. So I'm going to do a share screen right now and begin talking to you a little bit about the subject. I want to introduce what we're going to be talking about, though, with the first a basic definition of what generative AI is, because we're not going to be really talking about broader AI. AI comes up in a lot of contexts. If you use Facebook and it's recognizing who's in your photos on Facebook, that's AI. If you are using a GPS system, or you're using Waze and when you're going on the highway, that's using AI. There's lots of machine learning tools that have been around for a while in the space. I had been building little simple AI tools 8 years ago that were elaborate decision trees that produced a legal analysis of a certain problem on there. That seems pretty simple today, but that's AI. AI has been around for decades. What hasn't been around for decades is generative AI. Generative AI is what we're talking about when we're talking about ChatGPT, There are other tools that are out there, a lot of other tools that are out there, including Claude, which is from Anthropic. Um, Anthropic is, I think Amazon owns like a quarter of that company. Gemini is from Google. There's also Meta has LLM tools, what are large language model tools. Um, ChatGPT is has heavy investments from Microsoft. So a lot of big companies are in this space right now. What is it that's different about generative AI than these other AI tools that have been around for a while? Um, the main thing for our purposes today is that the name generative AI means that something is being generated from a query or a prompt on there. In this case, we're ChatGPT. For the most part, lawyers were talking about generating text, but generative AI can produce music, it can produce video, it can produce images, it can produce computer code, it can do all of that. And it is it's it's a way I think to think about it is it's ingesting millions and millions of pages of content from the internet and other places and other files, and it's an elaborate word guesser. So we've had, if you ask it a question and it's able to provide an answer, it's because it's using algorithms to guess what the answer is based on those millions and millions and millions of documents that it's looking at, um, and being able to say, here's patterns that we can see based on how you've answered the question and based on where the distance between words that we're seeing. This is the answer. So that's that might be hard to get your hands around, that it's not something that's actually thinking, but it's just basically algorithms that are executing on the prompt that you're giving it. Now, with that being said, it's really good, and it's really, if you ask a question to ChatGPT, the odds are pretty good that you're going to get an answer that's impressive. Um, it doesn't necessarily mean that the answer is always going to be right. In fact, a lot of the times the answer is wrong. Why is it wrong? It's not that it is trying to mislead you. It's that the algorithm that led it to basically putting together words that it thought were responding to the query that you gave it, but didn't do a good job. The other thing, the concept that I want you to think about as we're getting into this subject is, um, a couple things. One is that there's two things that generally make generative AI go wrong. One is that that it's pulling from everything on the internet. It's not pulling from a trusted set of documents or data, for the most part. There are tools out there, especially like you'll pay attention to that for legal research, for example, that the answers are limited to a curated set of documents on there. That's not what's happening with ChatGPT. It's basically looking over everything that's out there. And there may be high quality information that's out there that's been combed, and there may be low quality information that's out there that's combed. Second, there's this concept in when we're talking about generative AI called temperature. Temperature is quite simply the distance between words that are used to determine an answer. Why is that matter? A high temperature means there's a longer distance between words. A low temperature means it's the words are closer together in terms of figuring out how to put together the answer. Lower temperature means more conservative, and it means more likely that the answer is going to you're either going to get the correct answer or you're going to get the answer of saying, I don't know, on there. The higher the temperature, the more likely you're going to get an answer, and it's probably going to be an interesting answer, but it may not be an accurate answer. Um, the temperature scales that these tools use goes on a from 0 to zero point 0.9. ChatGPT by default is set at 0.7, so it's a fairly high temperature, and that is one of the reasons why why ChatGPT always has an answer. You may have noticed that if you can ask anything in ChatGPT, and you'll never get the response, I have no idea on there. But there are some tools out there that allow you to reduce the temperature, either in the library, if it's a curated library, or if it's combing the entire ChatGPT data set, you have the ability to adjust the temperature. So that's something to be thinking about, because that um, has a lot to do with mistakes that are being made. Okay, so let's uh, let's talk a little bit about generative AI legal products. These are some of the big ones that are out there. I include my product, which is pretty niche, but the others are mostly large companies. Co-Counsel is Thomson Reuters product. Harvey is a new company, but it has a lot of venture funding. It's building out AI tools that are mostly focusing on large law firms. Westlaw Precision was Thomson Reuters product that is before they bought Co-Counsel, and it's still there. But my understanding is that those products are getting closer and closer to being one product. Lexis AI is Lexis's product, and then there's a couple others below. But I wanted to show you those first, because those are the ones that seem to be most people don't know about if they know about generative AI products. But there's a lot of them, and these are just as of a couple of months ago, ones that were focused on the legal sector. So there's a lot of entrepreneurial activity happening in this particular space right now, aiming at a lot of different sectors of what lawyers do every day. So you can see a whole bunch that are aimed at corporate lawyers, a whole bunch that are aimed at the litigators. And then there are some that are niche practices that are niche softwares for certain kinds of practices. One is VisaLaw.ai. That's the company that I co-founded. And on here as well, you'll see ones that are focused on practice management and on research. These are some of the types of things that our lawyers are doing that are in the legal space. That is by no means a exhaustive list, but these are some of the common things that lawyers do with these AI tools. Some of them overlap, and some of them are substantive legal work. Some of them are more on the side of management, like client guides and alerts you might put into the marketing category. But analyzing contracts and legal drafting are certainly sort of traditional legal lawyer tasks. There are products out there that are specifically aimed at these, and then there are products that are more general, that can be customized to be used in these particular ways. Later on, we'll talk about how to actually shop for some of these kinds of products, but I wanted to put this slide in just to give you a little bit of an idea of things that lawyers are using them for. After I get through the ethics materials, hopefully we'll have some time to talk about that. So a lot of people, their first introduction to generative AI, lawyers, or just the entire country, really sort of at the only a few weeks after ChatGPT was introduced. These were the headlines, and as a young lawyer, I think I remember the phrase somebody once told me. It's like, don't do anything that you don't want to be on the cover of the New York Times, or some variation of that. And literally, this lawyer, in the Avianca case, that's became well, the lawyer's name wasn't particularly well known around the world, but what happened when he used ChatGPT made headlines globally. Just in short, this was a lawyer, you probably know about it, that had asked ChatGPT to help him find cases that were going to support a brief that he was working on. It did a great job of coming up with cases. Unfortunately, they were not real cases, but he cited them. He was disciplined by the court. I'm sure that he has been in hot water as well with the state bar. But it is the case that most people know about because it was the first. It has not been the only one. There have been many, many cases now around the country where lawyers have gotten into trouble for very similar conduct, as well as, I've seen variations on it. For example, somebody had got into trouble in New York for writing a blog post that cited all kinds of made up materials in there, but it's sort of all variations on the same thing, which is that the ChatGPT hallucinates. When I was telling you before that it sometimes gives you the wrong answer, that is a hallucination. When you get an answer that is not the correct answer, it will sound very sure of itself. So that's sometimes why lawyers think that that must be the correct answer. But that's a hallucination. And we'll talk about things that you can do to reduce issues with hallucinations. But that's the number one risk that you're going to be facing when you're using these tools, is that you're going to get a wrong answer, and that you are going to not go through the steps to basically minimize the risks associated with getting a wrong answer, like unquestioning belief that what you see on the screen must be correct and citing to it. Um, Second, data privacy. This is another one that you need to be thinking about. ChatGPT is not a tool that on its own would typically comply with legal ethics rules on confidentiality. And that's for two reasons. One is that what you put into ChatGPT is training the model. So these algorithms we were talking about, that is all based on training and of the documents that it receives. So it is looking at questions that it's getting from its users, and it's learning from those questions and able to produce better answers later on. If you put confidential information in to an answer in ChatGPT, it is possible that that answer, first of all, the question itself is being ingested into their database, but it's possible that somebody else might get information from your question in response to their question. That's one problem. With also another problem is that information that you're putting in your questions can potentially be seen by a human examiner, and that is because there are a lot of restrictions in the terms of use for ChatGPT, where you're not supposed to be using it for certain types of activities. Problem with lawyers is if you are a criminal lawyer, you may be putting in questions involving sensitive fact patterns as due to something that is related to the criminal case that you're working on. If you're an immigration lawyer, you may be representing somebody in an asylum case who's the victim of human trafficking, for example. Those are things that would would potentially flag a human examiner to look at the question and potentially intervene. That's a problem. Um, However, like with hallucinations, there are ways to address that. With data privacy, there are tools out there that are able to access ChatGPT, but in a private way, using something called an API. And also, there are certain versions of ChatGPT that are designed for businesses and have controls on them. And I have a slide later on. I'll show you what some of the differences are between different versions of ChatGPT, ones that you can use ethically as far as confidentiality rules, and ones that you can't. ChatGPT this is a problem that's largely gone now, but ChatGPT at the beginning and until very recently, they were relying on a data set that was not super old, but several months out of date. And so you could be getting answers to questions that are that have been that facts have overtaken whatever shown in the answer. Now the ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, they all basically pull from the live web when they're answering questions. So that is a less of a problem than it was before. But that's something that and now I think ChatGPT in the last couple of weeks has made it really clear that they intend to take aim at Google search monopoly. Well, not a monopoly, but close to it on there. So now being, very much up to date in the news and up to date on their as far as the data that they're accessing are important parts of the product. Next, bias. So I think most people realize there's a lot of biased information that's on the internet. Well, when you are doing massive combing of everything on the internet that's informing the answers that ChatGPT is using to answer questions, it is possible that the answers that you're going to be getting are going to be biased on there. So that's something that you just need to be aware of as a potential risk when you're overly relying on these particular tools. It's a problem as well when the government or courts are relying on these tools as well, where the information that they're going to be getting potentially is reflecting bias that could influence decision making. Last but not least, on the limitations is copyright violations. And this is still after a couple of years of this, ChatGPT just hit its recently hit its second anniversary. They are, and there's massive litigation that is going on in this particular space right now against language models from content producers. The law is still uncertain here, but just know that it's an issue. It's an issue with text. It's certainly an issue with the music industry. It's an issue with Hollywood. It's an issue with images. So it's really sort of throughout the different types of products that are in this particular space. Copyright holders are certainly concerned. So you ought to make sure that if you can, that you can see original citations to where the information is coming from, and hopefully try and produce something that is not that is not verbatim or closely relying on something that's copyrighted. Okay, so what oversight do lawyers need to consider? I've mentioned this already, but the ethics compliance, that's first and foremost, and having an understanding of how the how generative AI comes into play with the different ethics rules from the different states. Malpractice. So, this is one that there has not yet been much published or in the news about clients suing lawyers for relying on AI that led to bad results. There have certainly been some instances, it seems likely probably in some of the examples that have come out of lawyers who've gotten in trouble for using generative AI in a way that hurt a client would probably be potentially in trouble from a lawsuit perspective. But what we haven't seen yet, at least I haven't seen yet, are insurance companies kind of wrapping their hands around how they want to deal with the issue. So my guess is that probably in the next year or so, we're going to be starting to see more and more language in insurance policies and more information coming from insurance carriers, educating their customers on how AI could potentially increase risk and putting out best practices. I am not sure yet whether they're going to try and have carve-outs to not cover certain types of activities, but I'm guessing that there is a lot of discussion that's happening in the malpractice insurance field regarding what that's going to look like. The courts. There have been a flurry of rules issued by state and federal courts on how lawyers can use AI in their pleadings and in their representations before the court. So I have a little discussion of that later on, but that's something that you should be thinking about. I just did a program for the International Bar Association, and that is a very hot area that's coming up in courts abroad. The Australia Supreme Court just issued a ruling that you can't use AI to produce witness statements and witness declarations on there. I will imagine that we're going to see more and more of that in the United States. And finally, regulatory oversight. So this is not, this is beyond the courts and beyond the ethics rules. We're talking about state and federal governments and foreign governments that are issuing rules. So the EU, for example, has a very substantial AI rule that recently came out that impacts a lot of companies, including law firms. The state of California has been working on this. There have been executive orders that have been issued by the Biden administration, and there will probably be more with the next administration. But that is something that you need to also understand, that you have to comply with those rules as well. So you need to be paying attention to all of these. All right, continuing on, as you're thinking about these AI tools, I like this image that nutrition-facts.ai had about basically how to look at different products and be able to determine how secure they were. But it had so they laid it out in a way that's familiar to all of us from the nutrition label. And they raise some issues that are good to be thinking about. Whether they have they're deleting data that's on there, whether they are anonymizing the training data that you're putting in, etc. So that's one way to think about it. Most people, though, I think right now are looking at ChatGPT as probably their primary tool if they're using anything. And I wanted to include this slide because it shows you that there are lots of different versions of ChatGPT, and which one you use may determine whether you're going to be potentially violating ethics rules or not. So the first two are the ones that most lawyers are using, which is the free version of ChatGPT, or the one that costs $20 a month. With the one that's free, I think you should also always be a little bit suspicious of any products that you use that are completely free, that are asking where you're putting any data in that might be sensitive. With ChatGPT, as I mentioned before, they are using it for training, and they are potentially visible to a human examiner. But even that's the case with ChatGPT Plus. You can flip a switch in ChatGPT Plus and put it in private mode, which solves the first problem, which is that it won't train on your on what you're saying. It also won't save your chat if you need to see it later on. So it's, from a practical point of view, it's a little annoying as far as using that toggle. But it doesn't solve the problem with potential a human examiner that can potentially look at it. So you shouldn't be ever be putting confidential information into version 1 or version 2 here. On the other hand, you can see the fact that they got the green light on all these: the ChatGPT Team, ChatGPT Enterprise, the OpenAI API. All of those are fine for lawyers to be using those in either in a law firm account, or using a product that's designed for legal using the OpenAI API. So there is a difference. It's between the products, and you need to know which ones you're using. If you're using a product that is pulling information from OpenAI, you need to make sure that it's using it in a way that it has a contract with OpenAI that's basically guaranteeing these things. So I mentioned as well the courts. This is a Ropes and Gray national law firm, did a nice job with compiling this website that is tracking every court in the country and what they're having to say on AI usage. So it pays to make sure that you're doing a check. If you're using AI in anything that you're doing in a particular court, you should be aware of what the court has to say about it. Some courts are putting restrictions on all AI usage. Some courts are putting restrictions on generative AI. And some of that might be just caution. Some of it may be requiring you to make disclosures. Some of them right now, nobody seems to be outright prohibiting AI as use, like the court I mentioned in Australia. But that's something that you need to be keeping an eye on. And you could check with the court directly, or you can use a resource like this. This is digging a little bit deeper, by the way, into the Ropes and Gray chart. So I asked, clicked on Texas, and it showed examples from 2 different courts on the different approaches that they were taking. So I'm not going to spend time on that, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of that resource. A number of states at the boards of professional responsibility level are starting to weigh in. There's more actually than are on this slide, but here these happen to be 8 states that are making that have had rulings so far that bring up generative AI in one way or another, where they've issued guidances or opinions. So that's something that you need to be aware of as well, of what your state has to say about it. And I thought I would, well, I'll show you a couple of some quotes from Florida. Was the first of the states that had anything to say with, and it's not even a year old, but there have been plenty that have followed Florida. Um, Again, emphasizing things that you would probably note. I mean, it's citing the rules that most likely you would think of: confidentiality, competency, and lawyer advertising rules. Um, this is New Jersey's statement on it. Again, this was also in January, right around the same time. The one right now that I think probably most lawyers should be at least aware of, even if their state is not doing anything yet in this space, is the ABA's Formal Opinion 512, which came out last summer. And again, it basically the opinion kind of went through some of the different model rules that seem to be the ones that most concerned it. Confidence mentioned. I'm going to get into more of that in a minute. Confidentiality, communications, how you talk to clients, whether you tell them, how you disclose to them. The last one is the one that's been controversial in that opinion regarding fees, where they say legal fees must remain reasonable, and you should basically consider lowering fees if you're using generative AI to increase efficiency, reflecting actual time spent. That is one that there's been, I guess, some not clarifications, but in the course of discussions, it seems like most of the focus is on lawyers that are claiming to be that matters took a certain amount of time, and generative AI reduced that time, and then they still build the clients based on time for time that they didn't spend because the AI did it. And I think that's fairly obvious. It's probably also fraud. But that seems to be what they're focusing on here. But there were concerns that if lawyers bill on a flat fee basis and they are able to use AI to reduce their costs, were they similarly obligated to reduce their fees if they weren't charging based on time? They were just charging a flat amount. And that seems to be not what they're talking about here. But I think we're going to probably see more and more discussion of that as time goes on. If you're in New York as well, there was a major review on generative AI that came out in that state a few months ago as well, and that's worth a look. All right, so let's look at the rules that we're talking about here as far as which there. This is pretty exhaustive. I mean, it's basically everything I could come up with that might come into play. Not all of these are probably likely going to show up as far as how states are going to have problems, but I'm going to show you some just quick hypotheticals on where these different rules might come into play. Competence. Lawyers have to keep abreast of the technology the latest technology they're using. Diligence, that lawyers have to actually do their job and be the lawyer, and be prompt. Four is lawyers have to communicate with their clients. 1.5, sorry, the lawyers can't collect unreasonable fees. 1.6 is confidentiality. 1.7 deals with conflicts of interest. That you may be curious is like, how does that come into play here? I don't know if I have a slide. I don't. Oh, I do have a slide on that. I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, but we're talking about largely mixing information. If you're using AI and you're training data, if you're training an AI on your data, there's potentially an issue with your blending client data together. and producing answers. Um, 1.15 is safeguarding property. That is basically, we're talking about data security. If the client's data is released out into the world because you were sloppy about your data safeguards, that's potentially Rule 1.15 violation. 1.18 duties to prospective clients. Okay, well, I'm going to skip that for right now. Rule 3.3, counter toward the tribunal. This is when you are using AI and not telling the judge that the AI wrote whatever was submitted, or if the court requires you to disclose it and you're not disclosing it, potentially an issue there. 5.1 and 5.3 are supervision, and I kind of want you to think this, there's sort of an overarching thing that comes up with this rule, but you're not just supervising your attorneys, you're supervising your AIs as well. But if you think of an AI as basically an artificial person, um, most of these things are things that come up in the discussions on outsourcing more broadly. If you or even insourcing. So if you use outside writers or contractors to help you with your legal work, there's a whole bunch of different issues that you have to think about from a ethics standpoint and how you work with them. Um, it's all the same kind of stuff that comes up if you're dealing with delegating tasks to an AI on there. And you also have even if you're sending tasks internally to somebody who's your employee, you still have certain responsibilities, like supervising them and making sure that they are, they're getting proper training in the technology. Um, Anyway, the last one I'll mention is unauthorized practice of law, and this is already, I think, coming up in the in some locations where there are bots that are basically providing legal analysis, legal documents, and the question comes up if it's just if a person is just interacting with the bot that the lawyer is, for example, putting out there, but there's no oversight beyond just putting the spot out there, is that potentially unauthorized practice of law? So those are a lot of the ones that would come up. But I think if you're sort of mostly thinking about competence, communications, confidentiality, supervision, those are those seem to be the areas that are getting the most, and fees. Those are the ones that are getting the most focus right now from regulators. Okay. So competency. We mentioned before that there's 40 states that have these rules. It started, I think, with Florida on there, but about lawyers having to be competent in if they're using a technology, they have to basically learn how to properly use the tech. And you can potentially have an ethics violation. If that's the case, I think certainly that was um, the Avianca Airlines case that I showed before. That was certainly the lawyer's claim, was that that was the excuse, was that they just didn't understand the tech. But that itself is a technology competency, is a violation itself if you're not complying. So um, the little hypotheticals I add here: a lawyer employs an AI tool to analyze case law, but fails to understand the algorithm's limits, and then they miss relevant precedent, or the tool hallucinates, and they're putting cases in that are not real. That's obviously what happened in that case. All right, continuing on. The sorry. Diligence. So a lawyer has to use reasonable diligence in representing and be prompt in representing a client. The hypothetical that I had here is: a lawyer relies on the AI for document review, does no oversight, and then the lawyer misses something that's vital because they didn't actually review anything. They just kind of cut and pasted it into whatever they were filing. Um, Same thing with if you think about it, with the contract drafting is another one. If you are using AI to draft a contract, and then there were specific things that were pertaining to the case that were completely missed, or there were things in there that were relevant. Again, it's not that different than asking a paralegal or an associate to draft something for you, and then and they have zero experience, but they provide it to you, and then you just basically pass it on without any oversight. That itself is potentially a problem. Communication. So this is when we're talking about is lawyers have to be communicate with the clients about things that affect their interest, and that can be an issue. So a lawyer uses AI to communicate updates to clients, but fails to engage the clients themselves. They never actually talk to the client. They just like basically shoot out AI stuff, and then clients are unhappy. Whether that's a violation or not, that's the type of thing that still causes people to complain, and worth avoiding. Another one might be a lawyer using AI generate summaries to talk to the client about what's happening in the case, but they don't. The summaries themselves are inadequate or potentially have mistakes, and it leads to clients being dissatisfied. So that's that being said, I don't know if I have a slide in here, but we actually do have language in our engagement letters now that discuss generative AI and how the firm uses it, why we use it, and inviting feedback from clients. But that's in our engagement letters. I welcome anybody who's watching this that wants to reach out to me. I'm happy to provide you that template language that we have in our engagement letters, which might be helpful to you in terms of figuring out how you want to disclose to clients. Um, I personally think clients want their lawyers using this technology because they assume that first of all, they assume the lawyer is going to be responsible with it, but they also want their lawyers having the best tools available to them. Um, so that's something to be thinking about, is how you talk to them about it. Fees we talked about before. Um, as far as if you're using these tools, first of all, can you pass on the cost of implementing this technology in your firm? That was one question that came up in the ABA opinion that wasn't entirely clear. Uh, I think most states are taking a kind of a relaxed view on that question about being able to, yes, you can incorporate that, like you can charge for other kinds of expenses that you have. And then another was if it's causing you, if you're, well, certainly if you're using it on a flat fee, I mean, if you're billing on an hourly basis, you have to be, you cannot, if you cannot charge for time for or charge as if it was taking the same amount of time, if it wasn't taking the same amount of time. If you're charging on a flat fee basis or a contingency basis on there, I don't think you have a problem as long as you, but again, you should be, I think, disclosing the clients that you're using the technology. Um, but look for more and more discussions on that at the state bar level. Confidentiality. This one we've already talked about. I did want to mention sort of the on here that this seems to be one that's causing concern for a lot more concern probably at the state bar level than just about anything. Um, the good news is this is probably one of the easiest rules to comply with as long as you're using the right tools on there. So that's one probably. It's like if before anything else, you need to be thinking about that issue. Um, Conflicts I mentioned before, where AI tools that inadvertently share information between different cases at a law firm that could potentially lead to those kinds of conflicts. I'm going to assume that's probably not going to be the case for most people that are watching this, but that is something that states are looking at as well. Duties to a prospective client. Lawyers shouldn't be revealing information learned in a consultation with a prospective client, even if the person doesn't become a client. And that duty exists regardless of the lawyer. Basically, if you're collecting confidential information, you have to protect that information. Um, as far as hypotheticals, the first one was a lawyer using AI to manage initial consults, and then information being stored and used for other purposes on there. That's certainly a lot of lawyers are using note-taking tools right now for consultations, and you just need to think about what happens with that information. And and make sure that it's not being used for anything that would expose clients' confidential information. Um, Same thing with AI-driven customer relationship management systems. A lot of the systems that lawyers use, like Constant Contact and all that, they're rolling out lots of AI tools in them right now, and you just need to be aware of how those tools are working. Read the terms of service in those tools just to make sure that client information that you're putting in isn't training in a way that would violate rules. Um, anyway, continuing on, candor to the tribunal we talked about before, with the misinformation being incorporated into legal briefs and potentially giving courts false information about, or either, even if the cases aren't made up, it's sort of a incorrect spin on the case that's coming out of a generative AI on there, and the lawyer didn't actually read the case and doesn't realize that the description of the case that they're citing isn't what they said. That could potentially be an issue here. Anyway, supervision. This is, again, I think, this is probably happening at a lot of firms right now where there are, I mean, I'll give you an example. I was at a legal tech event and talking with another lawyer, and he was telling me that his firm bars generative AI tools from being used in any way whatsoever. And it's like, well, that's great. But how do you know it's not being used? Because I've heard a lot of accounts of people that are just using it all the time with or without permission. And that's something that, I think if you are basically barring it outright from being used, my concern for a lot of firms would be that it's going to be used and that you're, burying your head in the sand. It might be better to have a AI use policy at your firms that, and I might have a slide on that a little bit later, where the AI use policy not only says what are appropriate ways to use it and what are not, but also giving your team proper training so that they understand, for example, why ChatGPT is a confidentiality risk, or why, using, how hallucinations work and things that you can do to reduce it. If you take a, more forward thinking approach, that might be better than an outright ban where these tools end up being used, but without permission on there, where you have no control or no input into what's actually happening. Professional independence. This is one, again, where the lawyer is not, and the lawyer basically cedes control to the AI as far as, the drafting that's happening, where the lawyer is just cutting and pasting. There's sort of, more variations on that theme. And again, if you're using these tools, the lawyer has to actually do the lawyer. I guess the easiest way to think about it is the lawyer has to be the lawyer. They can't just basically pass on information from the AI without actually reviewing the underlying materials, reviewing what was written, and making sure that the document is actually based on the documents that were underlying it were actually saying what the AI said, and that the what was said at the end represents the lawyer's way of thinking about it. UPL, we talked about that as the bot. The bot example, there are others as well, but look for more and more companies out there, both law and non-lawyer owned companies, that are going to be more and more relying on AI to provide information to the public, answering questions, but also generating legal documents. And I see that, that's been a fight for 20 years or more already, with some companies that have been in the document automation space, and it's going to be more and more of an issue with generative AI. That being said, again, these major acts, the EU AI Act, the Algorithm Accountability Act, that's another one that's been proposed in Congress, hasn't passed, but I wanted to kind of put it out there just to show you that there's legislation that's dealing with some of these issues. Anyway, there are also bills that are pending in several states and cities, and in foreign jurisdictions. If you practice internationally, you should be aware of that. AI use policies. Just switching subjects. I'm done talking about ethics rules for now, but I did want to mention with AI use policies, that one is that there should be a training module in it. That should basically be something that anybody that's using AI in the firm should have to go through that before they're actually allowed to touch the tools. It should list what is okay and what is forbidden to use to provide those kind of guidelines. There should be discussions about what types of activities violate the ethics rules that we just went through, and also on preserving clients' privacy and data security, and also how to have conversations with clients about the use of it. That lawyers and paralegals and others in the firm should be prepared to have to be able to explain to clients that have questions about how it's being used in there. Um, Also, like the engagement letter language that I have for, I'm happy to provide. I also have a model AI use policy that I'm happy to send to anybody that sends me an email asking for it. That goes through those things. One of the things that from our manual I mean our use case is the training module that I mentioned a minute ago. This is like an hour, and it is it's a pretty um, decent overview of what we were just talking about. But it is something that and you could record it, obviously, and anytime a new employee comes in, you can have them have to watch it. You can I think we have I don't know if it's this part. I don't think I can I have to send, but I think we have a quiz that people have to pass after they've gone through this, just to make sure that they actually paid enough attention on there. It's serious enough, I think, that your employee should have to be, before they're using this, should have to demonstrate that they actually understand the policies. Okay. Let me move on. Hang on a second. Okay. I'm going to change subjects now and talk about, move away from the scary stuff and talk about maybe some more of the practical stuff about how you actually start incorporating some of this into your practice. Um, so I'm going to talk about legal research tools, and I'm not sure where the header is on this, but basically, this slide is about how to what you need to be thinking about when shopping for an AI legal research tool. I showed you at the beginning several of the ones that are available. One is you remember I talked about that you can have a product that is only pulling information from a curated library. That would be using this technique called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And it's basically a database where when you ask a question of the chatbot, it's using ChatGPT's model to basically, it's essentially teaching it English and helping it to be able to communicate back with you. But the answers are all coming from the data set that you have. So the product that I've worked on with the American Immigration Lawyers Association, we have 165,000 files in this library. It's like basically the largest immigration law library in the world. It has millions of pages of content. And when a lawyer asks a question, it is only pulling from that content. Now that doesn't make you necessarily get a perfect answer. There's a lot that goes into the system prompt. We set it at there's a lot that goes into getting the right answer, but at its core, at least the quality of the information that it has to rely on to pull the answer is good. Second thing that we do with that, and any of these products should be doing, and I know that, I know Thomson Reuters and Co-Counsel set their temperature to 0. I know Lexis sets their temperature to 0. That should be something that is the default, and to the extent that you can make it get more aggressive, that should be user controlled, and that should not be the default. Most of them don't, at least on legal research questions, don't let you mess around with that. But you may there may be other parts of the tool where you can adjust the temperature depending on what you're trying to do. Citations. That's another one where, again, this is how, as a lawyer, you need to be reviewing where the answer came from that is coming up in your legal research. So that's not just a citation, it's also a link to an actual document that you could look at to see the original source. Um, and that's critical. If you're looking at products that basically, have citations and don't have anything more than that, it's possible you'll have the same problem as the Avianca case where, the lawyer asked it to give citations and it just made the citations up. The lawyer, it did not provide links to actual cases, of course, because they were made up, but you should be, and there are products that actually provide links to cases, and then the lawyers don't actually bother to read the cases. I think that's always been a problem. But it's not that different than if you got an associate to write a memo for you. You would ask the associate to attach the cases, and you would look, and that would allow the lawyer that's reviewing the work to be able to see the underlying cases to make sure that the person that's writing the memo actually understood what the cases had to say. But that's something that you should be looking for. Should be able to upload your own materials potentially. They may not mix in with the law library, but you can do analysis of them. So one example I'll give you that's, you can tell this is in December of 2024 that this is being recorded. We had an election in the United States last month and a new president's coming in. There is a document that got a lot of discussion during the campaign called Project 2025. It's a 900-page, basically rundown of ideas from some people that are backing the president. Anyway, there's a big immigration section in there, at least 100 pages. I uploaded that document and have been asking all kinds of questions and getting analysis back from the AI based on that particular document. But that's a document I uploaded, and I have the ability then, and actually the tool I use, when it says something that I found in the document, it will take me to that page and and it'll open up that page. I can actually look at the document on that particular page. So that's the kind of thing that you want to have. Again, how is it handling sensitive and confidential data? You should be asking your vendors about that, looking at the privacy and data security documents that are provided. And then how does it integrate with other products that you use? So can you push out answers into your case management system? Can you pull information? Maybe you're using it to mix. You're blending in research and drafting, and can you pull information from your case management system? But anyway, those are some of the things that you would be thinking about on the research side of things. Some of the research products also have other functions, and these functions sometimes show up in other law products that are not specifically about research, but there are more and more that are providing translation services as well as summarization um, and analyzing documents. And keep in mind, these are all sort of variations on what these language models are really good at, which is basically being able to handle language on there. So it is I think translation and summarization are probably two of the highest quality areas in that you can get as far as the ability to do the job well on there. The least area likely to see mistakes probably are in summarization and translation. Document analysis can be quite good as well. This is when you upload a document and then you might write a prompt to get it to perform a certain task or to give you basically, help you understand what the document you uploaded, what the major arguments are, maybe to help you figure out counter arguments and find fallacies in the document, but basically working with a document like that. And because it's an illegal research, it's an illegal tool, whether it's a research tool or not, it can handle confidential documents, which is obviously important. Drafting, I think, is just getting going, and we're going to see a lot of development in that space in 2025, where lawyers can upload supporting documents, answer questions, and then the AI can go to work as basically, if it's trained on good templates and it has access to law, some of these products can do quite a good job. One that's good is Pattern Builder from NetDocuments. That's a tool that I've been using since it came out nearly 2 years ago. But also there are plenty of others in the space as well, and it's worth taking a look at them. And I expect those products are going to get better and better. Um, on the drafting products, just a couple of details about things that you should be thinking about when you're looking at them. The longer the documents, the more likely you need a special tool to be able to help you produce them, and you can't do a simple um, tool like even a a private version of ChatGPT, because um, there are token limits. Tokens just basically a fancy word for data, and it just means that there are limits to how much input you can put into your question and how much output it can give you in terms of what it's going to draft. It tops out most of the time if you ask one of these tools to produce something, usually at around 2 or 3 pages, sometimes longer than that. So if you're going to use those kinds of tools, just keep in mind that you may have to do them in a series of sections and build it one at a time. It's not just going to produce one document, but there are some very good tools out that are able to handle complex documents, because basically what they're doing is they are creating on the fly multiple prompts on there, and the prompts themselves they're not created ahead of time. They're basically created from the questions that you answered. They're created from the documents you uploaded. They're created from the templates that are being used, and it'll be a completely different set of prompts for each document that you're working on. That's the technique that's being used by the legal drafting companies. Um, Second, can you use your templates, or do you have to use the vendors? The reason why that's important is that if you have a style that you like, or you have a voice that basically sounds like your firm's voice on your documents, that if you are using these AI tools and everything sounds like, the vendor's law firm that helped it to produce these particular tools, that might not be so satisfactory either. So some of the vendors are giving the opportunity to have your templates and not their templates feeding in. You want to know where where it's drawing its information, like who wrote the interview, what's in the law library that's informing the documents. There's just a lot of components to it, and the more you know about how these tools are finding its information, the better you'll be able to evaluate whether it's quality, whether it's of a decent quality or not. Anyway, and also how are, citations and exhibits handled as far as incorporating them into the documents that you're using. So the last of the product spaces that I wanted to mention dealt with case management billing and using AI. So some of the I think a lot of the case management products have already rolled it out, but starting last year, I think one of the first ones, I doubt they were the first, but one of the first was Clio. And I went to the Clio conference this year, and I went to the Clio conference last year, and I was able to kind of see how that product had developed over the course of a year. And I think a lot of other companies are now doing similar things, but basically, if you think of your case management system as a data warehouse for all your client information on there, and all the information on your employees' work product, you can gain a lot of information. You can ask it, for example, to spot patterns in your cases based on results, and based on all the cases that you filed in this particular court that had these particular facts on there. Can you spot any similarities? Who are the most profitable paralegals that you have in your firm? Which are your clients that are, typically, calling you the most? All kinds of things you can get that you can ask it natural language questions that you sort of you ask these questions anecdotally to your team right now, and they sort of give you a gut reaction, but you can actually use these tools to help you with that. There are new tools now that are helping you draft time records. Billables.ai is a good generative AI new tool that's out there that will look at what you're working on all day. It sees what Word documents you had, sees what websites you're on, and it will help you at the it knows how long you were working on different things, and it knows from the context which clients it can guess which clients you're working on based on what it's seeing. And then it can help you draft a timesheet. That's like one of the most unpleasant tasks that lawyers have to do. And I think those tools are going to be relatively popular as lawyers get used to them. Um, the Anyway, and then also, obviously these tools can be really good as far as helping you communicate with your clients by, quickly, if you give it instructions to find all your clients where this applies to them, and then draft an email and be able to send it to all your clients. It's certainly a much faster way to potentially do things you're already doing. So that's case management and billing. Um, One more slide and then I will be done. And that is having the conversation with clients. So I've already talked a little bit about this, but this is the one I wanted to end with because I think for a lot of lawyers, they are, anxious to use this, but they're nervous about how to have those conversations. So I would say first and foremost, um, you have to, I think, get the build trust with your clients around the various issues on security and privacy, and that you're basically using the tools responsibly in that space. I would have a conversation at the very outset. You can have it in your initial consultation. You can put it in your engagement letter. But you shouldn't be necessarily like waiting until way out and then telling clients, especially after the fact, that you're using them. Um, My case, I'm a founder of an AI company, so I think most of our clients probably assume that we are. But we do have it in our engagement letters, and a lot of times I actually um, will show the clients how we are using it, and a lot of them think it's pretty cool on there. So it's from our perspective, it's part of marketing and branding. Explain what the software is doing and what it's not doing on there, and explain why it's just a tool that you're using and it's not actually replacing your legal judgment on there. But you can show them, how you use it in various instances and why it's giving you better results. So, and talk to them about how you've been using it and how other firms are using it and why it's to the benefit of their clients. And then last but not least, certainly for a lot of clients, talk about how this is actually, at the end of the day, it's improving your work quality and it's helping save them money, ultimately by being able to make you more efficient in how you're actually doing your work. So that is my last slide. I am happy to move into questions. I'm going to stop the screen share. Well, no, I'll keep this for a minute on here so that you can at least get this information. But I'm certainly happy to answer any questions if people have them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg, for your presentation, as well as the insights and resources that you've mentioned throughout. I've learned a lot from this, certainly a lot more than I thought I knew coming in. So hopefully our audience did too. So go ahead and grab that information regarding Greg's contact information. Now, we can certainly move on to Q&A. If any of you have any questions for Greg, please submit them in the Q&A button in the control panel.
All right.
Now, I do see that we do have a couple. Do you want me to ask you those questions, or are you going to just jump right in on your own?
Let me jump in first. On the first one, it's easy. What would be the best way to reach out for a copy? Email is probably best, or find me on LinkedIn and send me a message there. And just tell me if you want the two things I was offering. One is the AI use policy, and the other is the language for an engagement letter. If you want both, just tell me you want both. If you only want one or the other, just tell me which one you want. Okay. Number two, can I talk about explaining to clients the benefits and potential risks of using generative AI in their cases? So I think one of the, so a typical way that I might use it in my practice is with the immigration law, the immigration law product I was talking about, is I might be doing a consultation by Zoom with the client, and a esoteric immigration law question comes up that I'm not quite sure. In the old days, what I would probably start with first there is I would tell the client, let me go walk down the hall and knock on a colleague's door who I know is more knowledgeable about a particular issue than me. That used to be my go-to. Now, what I'll do in a lot of cases is will tell them I have an AI that I've been involved with developing. Let's see what the AI says, because even if we're not sure the answer that it's giving us, it's going to give us citations that are probably going to be helpful for me to double check and make sure I'm comfortable with the answer. And I will do that. I'll ask the question, and it'll put out an answer, a memo, and then uh, a lot of times it's sort of like I already know. When I see the answer, it sort of confirms what I was pretty sure about. But if not, I will then go and dig in, and the our tool, when you see with the citations, you can expand and see a preview window of what language it was using to from the document that it was pulling from, a little blurb, and then you can click to pull up the original document. So sometimes the blurb itself is fine. Sometimes I'll open up the document and we'll look at it and just see if it's if it was talking about this specific situation, or maybe it was a little bit broader, or it doesn't exactly match. But usually we have multiple citations, so I can check more than one. That's another tip as well when you're using legal research tools. If it's pulling from multiple places and giving, it should be able to give you more than one link to more than one document that you can look at. So they like to see that when they see it in action. Sometimes clients will actually say, "Oh, can you ask it this on there?" Which I always get a kick out of when it's like, you can ask me on there, but they ask me to ask the AI that. But sometimes as well, like during the consultation, I will ask it to generate for me a checklist of all the documents I'm going to need from the client. It'll generate a questionnaire form that's going to collect the information I'm going to need, and then I can send that to the client on there. A lot of times clients can ask me, can I write them a summary of what we talked about? And there's the note-taking tools can be really good for that. We didn't even really get into that here, but a lot of people have been using them for a while. But if you use Zoom's AI companion, or you're using Firefly, or using Read.ai, those tools will give you a transcript, but they also will give you a kind of a bullet pointed summary on there. And obviously, my clients love when I send them a link where they can actually see the consultation and see those notes and see everything that I can see when I'm using those tools. So I think they like that. It really, I think, feels like they're collaborating more with us in this process, and it's not sort of like the lawyer on high who's the voice of the Almighty that's providing the information. And I generally get a positive response from them when they see it in action. So that's the way I would probably approach it: is don't hide it from them, kind of be upfront with how it's being used, and also talk to them about how you deal with the problems with it. Like getting a wrong answer. And that's why, that's why I always check the citations and we read the original materials. So hopefully that's helpful for the way to think about that. Um, if a client challenges my use of AI in the representation, what steps should I take to address their concerns while maintaining trust? Well, you have to make a choice. First of all, some firms may decide that, what, we can't change the whole way we're operating now. This is a important part of the way we're doing it. And so not every client is a good fit for every law firm. And there may be clients that you say, what, we're probably not the right firm for you anymore for this, because these tools are part of our processes now and how we're operating. Or it may not matter for you to say, what, this is not integral to everything that we're doing at this point. So I'm happy to basically notify the team that for your matters, we're not going to use any of these tools. Sometimes I think they don't understand that spell check and Grammarly and things like that are actually using generative AI capabilities now also. So it may be that they're sort of just trying to focus on the ones that are sort of the problematic ones or what they saw in the news. But I think what you want to do is first, find out why they're challenging your use in there, and it may be that they have a perceptions about how you're going to be using it, and that might not comport with reality. They may not understand the safeguards that you're using. They may, they may have been probably using the tools themselves and saw that it made mistakes, and are worried that the same thing's going to happen to you. So I think you just need to sort of go through those objections. But honestly, you're probably going to hear that from some of your team as well, that are not that familiar with the tools. They're going to give you a lot of reasons why you shouldn't be using them, and I think you need to be really comfortable with the tech and how you address the issues like we talked about today.
I don't want to, take up too much of time. Unfortunately, we are running out of time for a little bit. So let me just ask 3 quick questions. They should be hopefully relatively short so we can move on quickly. But we did have someone ask where they could find your email contact. Would you like to provide that?
Yes, it is G for my first name, Greg Siskind, Siskind, at visalaw.com. Visa like the credit card, but Visa in my case is about immigration. law.com. You can find me there or search my name on LinkedIn, and you can connect with me there and send me a message there.
All right, perfect. We did have another question that says, how do you envision AI changing the traditional lawyer-client relationship?
Well, I think, and our clients eventually are going to expect lawyers to be using this, and they are going to assume lawyers are using high quality technology that's providing high quality legal work, and they're going to be hiring lawyers, and there's going to be less differentiators in terms of work product quality as these tools get better and better. But I do think it's going to be a lot more about relationships between clients and lawyers, where they are going to be looking at their lawyer as their advisor and their trusted person that is going to guide them through a very challenging process that they're going through in terms of whatever legal process that they're working through. And so I tell people, it's like, you really need to focus on the human side of how you interact with clients, and how if you have a lousy bedside manner and you are not good at that part of it, I think those lawyers are going to struggle in the future, because that's the main thing that they're going to have to sell, is that their trust and their ability to make clients comfortable. I think that's going to be the same with paralegals as well, where they're going to be a lot more in the customer service business and less in actually just churning out, forms or documents that AI can usually do, a pretty good job on, or will be able to do a good job on. So that's I think the human touch is probably going to be why some lawyers are successful and some are not.
All right. And then the last question that we have time for today is, what's the name of that AI tool that you had created?
Oh, so our tool is visalaw.ai. And we have a sister product that called sandbox.law that we are working on. It's should be out soon that's for lawyers in other fields, but the visalaw.ai is the one for immigration law.
Perfect. Now, thank you so much. We do also want to thank you for joining us today for another Justia webinar. You were fantastic. The audience, great questions. I do also want to remind you all, as Nina did at the top of the presentation, of the services available to you through our website platform known as Justia Elevate, our innovative, feature-packed website solution designed specifically for law firms. Built on a powerful WordPress platform, Justia Elevate offers cutting-edge tools like the Justia AI Writer, which does help you craft top-tier content effortlessly, and the AI-powered Justia Chat, which enhances new leads like never before. The best part, you can elevate your friend's digital presence starting at just $82.50 per month when billed annually. If that does sound interesting to you, visit us at elevate.justia.com/price or give us a call at 888-587-8421. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did enjoy it, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel for more videos on law practice and legal marketing. See you in our next clip.